Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7:30, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to say welcome and thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Jimmy Swindler, and I am the chairman or the chair of the Youth Advocacy and Prevention Group for our school, known as the YAP Group. We, the YAP Group, have been meeting for several years now, and we're sponsoring this meeting tonight at the direction of our school board. What I'll be doing is briefly presenting the background of the YAP Group, some results of a recent Pride survey that was done in our school, and the resulting proposal that the YAP Group has recommended to the board. In other words, where we've been, what we've learned, and where we believe we need to go. At the conclusion of my presentation, which I promise you will be no more than 15 minutes at most, I will open the floor for questions first, and then comments. When we get to that point, I would ask that all please keep their remarks polite and as brief as possible. School board guidelines of 2 to 3 minutes are a good rule of thumb, so that all who wish to will have a chance to speak. I will also remind us that while we might differ in our approach, we all have the same overarching goal, and that is to help the children of our community make good choices. Please let that common desire unite us as we in turn strive to make good choices for our kids. So, some background. First of all, the YAP Group for Rappahannock County Public Schools is tasked with finding ways to help our students make positive choices in regards to alcohol, drugs, as well as bully prevention. This group involves a wide spectrum of the community. We have our CPS staff, we have law enforcement, we have social service representation, we have parents of our children, and we have coaches. In 2013, the YAP Group recommended the Pride survey as a way to gain confidential and non-threatening information from our students related to bullying, alcohol, and drugs. This Pride survey is a nationally recognized survey instrument used by schools not only across Virginia, but also across the country. The results of the survey, which was given, I believe, in the spring of 2014, there's 3 things I want to talk about briefly. Number 1, what we found was that our students' alcohol, drug, and tobacco use, self-reported use, are within regional and national norms, with some indication of alcohol and drug use, particularly among our juniors and seniors, on a regular basis. Specific results showed us that in the 6th and 7th grade, we literally had a 0% self-report of alcohol and tobacco in the previous 30 days to the survey. 8th grade, 5% reported the use of alcohol and tobacco in the previous 30 days. When we get up to grades 11 and 12 is when we start to see numbers like from 24% to almost 40% reporting the use of alcohol and drugs in the previous 30 days. The other thing that we found from the survey was the where and when of this usage. And one of the things we were happy to learn was that at school and during school hours, those are the least popular reported locations and times of usage. At home and at a friend's house, on weeknights and particularly on weekends, were by far the most popular reported locations and times of use. Now, I'm going to show you just a few bar graphs, just to basically put a color representation to these numbers I threw at you, and I'll talk through them. I apologize that my screen isn't bigger. What we're looking at there is the past 30-day use of tobacco, e-cigarettes, alcohol, and any illicit drug. The bar chart on the left is for tobacco. The bar chart that's colored red is for 8th graders, and then moving to your right, all the way to the one that's colored green is for seniors, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you look over to the 2 on the far right, the one on the very far right is for self-reported drug use. And we see very low numbers for our 8th graders and our 9th graders, jumped up to about 14% for our 10th graders, and then over 25% for both our juniors and our seniors. Then the one next to it, use my pointer, or not. That one is for alcohol. It's the one that's second from the right. And what we see there is over 30% of our juniors and our seniors self-reported the use of alcohol within the previous 30 days, and about 14% of our sophomores. The next 2 charts show when our students said that they used alcohol, that's the chart on your left, and when they said they used marijuana. Now, the colors here, the red bars mean before school, the yellow bars mean during school hours, the blue bars mean after school hours, the tan bars are weeknights, and then the green bars, which are the highest for both of these, are weekends. And again, we see a pattern where we see the highest amount of use amongst our juniors and our seniors. The chart on the right is the same thing, except that this question was, when do you use marijuana? And again, you see a little disturbing in that the responses are a little higher for before school and during school for marijuana than they were for alcohol, but about the same once you get to the weekends. This last one, this is the last one, this is in reference to where our students say that they use alcohol and where they use marijuana. In this case, again, the colors, the red bars are at home, the yellow bars represent at school, the blue bars represent in a car, the tan bars represent at a friend's house, and then the green bars just was other. And again, what we see is that where alcohol and again where marijuana was used predominantly was either at home or at a friend's home. You see the yellow, which represents school, or the blue, which represents in a car, was significantly lower than the others. Although I will note that the use of marijuana in the car was quite a bit higher than that of alcohol. Now, what came out of that? The YAP committee met several times, went over the Pride survey, and we identified some needs that we felt were made apparent by the survey. One, we believe that we need programs to help ensure that our schools and our students remain alcohol and drug free all of the time. That's our goal, all of the time. Some may say it's unattainable, but that's our goal. Two, we believe that we need extracurricular activities that are safe and healthy for our kids. Three, we need peer-relevant reasons for our students to combat the societal pressures that they face to use alcohol and drugs. Reasons that mean something to their friends. And fourth, we feel that there is a need for support for students and families that struggle with drug and alcohol issues. So, question is, why random testing? The YAP group's purpose, again, is to help our schools counter or reduce alcohol and drug use, as well as bully prevention. Suggestions from the meetings that we had from our YAP members included continuation of successful educational interventional programs. DARE is one example that seems to work well at the lower grades and at the middle school level. Olveus has worked very well as far as bullying prevention. We want to keep those and also look for other programs to counter drug and alcohol use. The reality is there really haven't been any programs that are deemed to be very successful as far as reaching high school students. If there were, if I had one, as I've said many times, I wouldn't be here tonight. I'd be out on a national book tour supporting it. That's just the reality. An area of concern focused on our realization that the opportunity and access to drugs and alcohol outside of school made it harder for students, for our students, to just say no. So the team considered other ways to help our students say no, including random drug and alcohol testing. And in the fall of 2015, last fall, Mark Cole, who is the Orange County Director of Student Activities, came to one of our meetings, shared the experience that he and Orange County has had for the past 3 years with random drug testing of extracurricular competitive athletes and activity members. He also came to a school board meeting in the fall of last year and shared his experience and answered some questions. Research was also conducted relating to other testing programs currently in place in Virginia schools. The next slide shows there are 4 schools that are confirmed as having testing programs: Orange County, Culpeper County, Pulaski County, and Buckingham County. Orange County, as I mentioned earlier, I believe they're in their 3rd year. Mr. Cole is with us tonight, am I right? 3rd year or 4th year? Third year of testing, they test for alcohol and drugs. They use a mouth swab. They have 4 staged consequences for positive tests. And let me explain that for a moment. The student tests positive. They're not kicked off the team. They're not sent to law enforcement. The student meets with the school and their parents. I believe the first consequence for the first positive test is they're suspended from 20% of their remaining games in that season, but they are allowed to continue to meet and practice with the team. They don't want to send these kids out there. They want to keep them in-house. They work with the guidance counselor, develop a program to help the kid and their family, and the kid also agrees to more frequent testing, and after a period of time, with no more positive tests, the kid goes back into the regular pool, is still a part of the team, continues to play. Then when I say stage consequences, after the second positive test, a little bit more severe, a little longer suspension, so forth and so on. The testing population for Orange are all students who participate in competitive extracurricular activities, grades 6 through 12. And competitive means sports, it also means band, anything where there's a competition. Culpeper County just started testing for alcohol and drugs literally this spring semester of 2016. They do urine tests. They too have 4 stage consequences, and they too test their students, grades 6 through 12, who participate in competitive extracurriculars. Pulaski County tests for alcohol and drugs. They also do a urine test. They have 3 stage consequences, and they test just their student athletes, grades 6 through 12. And then lastly, Buckingham County, they test for alcohol, drugs, and nicotine. They also do a urine test. They have stage consequences, but they're different for nicotine, and then for alcohol, and then for drugs. And they test all students who participate in any extracurricular activities in grades 9 through 12. Now these are the 4 schools that confirmed they had testing. It's my understanding that there are others out there who do have testing, but I did not include them in this report because I never heard back from their AD or their principal. We also know, as the next slide shows, there are other schools that have done testing and dropped it, and some that have considered it but not adopted it. Lynchburg City Schools, for instance, did testing up until 2009. They dropped it as a result of a budget cut, but they reported to me that out of approximately 500 tests, they only had 2 positives. Madison County, Isle of Wight, Caroline County, and Henry County have all considered it, but for one reason or another have not adopted it. So, the YAP committee, as a result of the time spent analyzing the PRIDE results, made some recommendations. The YAP group is proposing that the RCPS School Board consider adoption of a random testing program similar to that exists in Orange County for participants in competitive extracurricular activities. The YAP committee is also hosting, that's tonight, a public community meeting about this random testing, and we or I will report feedback to our school board members, many of whom are here tonight, at the May 10th regular meeting, next Tuesday. Moving forward, if the school board approves the testing proposal, the YAP committee would work with the superintendent to formulate regulations and policy to ensure that this process is done correctly, and then following approval and with support of the board, the YAP team anticipates that we could implement a testing program as soon as this August of 2016. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. What I'd like to do is to turn this over to you for your questions and comments. But before I do, just a few things to consider. Again, as I said earlier, we're all here to do what's best for our students. We might disagree on specifics. I know that drug testing is a hot button issue, but we should be united in our desire to help our kids. Drug and alcohol use among young people, among our students, does occur. PRIDE survey confirms that. We cannot say it doesn't happen here. It does. Neighboring counties, Culpeper, Madison, Fauquier, are battling drug and alcohol usage rates to include dramatically increased rates of heroin use and overdose. There have been several public meetings recently. There's one coming up Friday, May 6th at Highland at 1 o'clock. It's a real, it's a very viable issue. Tonight's meeting, again, is for informational purposes. No decision will be made tonight regarding the adoption of any testing program. The school board will consider this proposal on May 10th at their regular meeting. So, like I said, I'd like to start with questions, and what I'm going to try to do as you ask them, I'll write the questions up so we can all see them and do my best to answer them. If I need to, I may turn to Mr. Cole, who graciously agreed to join us tonight. He may be able to answer something I can't. If you raise a hand, and I'll just work my way through. Let's start right here.
Why is there more drug use among kids in extracurricular activities? Why are they being targeted specifically?
Well, first of all right, why? Sure. All right. Thank you.
Actually, my question is similar to Dabney's, and you might be able to address them together, which is the Pride survey doesn't seem to have had any questions related to a targeted population of students, which goes to Dabney's question of why target the kids who are involved in extracurricular. How do you know that's your target population?
And we don't know. The Pride survey, you're absolutely right, does not tell us which kids participate in extracurriculars or which kids do not. What it tells us is that we have a certain percentage of kids who self-report that within the previous 30 days they had used alcohol or drugs. Given our small numbers, I think we would have to assume that a fair amount of those positive respondents are probably participating in extracurriculars. But to go to your question, why? Okay, because legally, the Supreme Court has upheld testing of students involved in extracurricular activities, and that's it.
So it seems like a punishment then. If you're involved in an extracurricular activity, you have this extra burden put on you, but if you don't want to, you don't get tested.
Well, my answer to that would be I don't consider it a punishment. First of all, you have to remember, we are not asking our kids to do anything that they and their parents are not already agreeing to do. Every one of our extracurricular participants signs an athletic pledge where they agree not to use tobacco, not to use alcohol, not to use drugs.
But athletics is not the only extracurricular activity at issue, and students in other activities that are extracurricular are not required to sign such a pledge. Band, for example.
Right, but again, we have not yet developed, and as you know, as you saw on the comparison of the schools that have testing programs, it seems that every school has a slightly different population which they test. That is something, if the board decides to go forward with this, that is when the committee would work together with the board, with the superintendent to determine what exactly would our testing population be. Would it be just athletes? Would it be children who participate in competitive extracurricular activities, which would include band because they compete? Would it be children that participate in all extracurricular activities, which at least one school does? Those are details that we would have to obviously work out, and we would, publicize those. But, I hope that answers your question.
I have a question about, a detailed question about exactly what you mean by random also. Like,
absolutely.
Randomly, every student on the band,
They
or
know.
random
What random means, and Mr. Cole, if I get this wrong, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. The way Orange County does it, every student that is in an extracurricular competitive activity goes into the testing pool. The testing pool, I'm sorry. The goal is to test 10% of each activity. So for instance, if your football team has 60 kids on it, then you know that by the time the season is over, 6 of those kids are going to be tested. If your volleyball team has 15 kids, then depending on whether you round up or round down, you're either going to test 1 or 2. Once you are tested, your name goes back into the pool. There's no guarantee that once you're tested, you won't be tested again. But again, we're talking 10%.
And how do you choose those 10%? I think Johnny is doing it, so we're going to do Johnny.
First of all, the testing company that we would use, if we were to go this route, let me back up and say, the testing company, for instance, that Orange County uses, what they would send to them is not a list of names, but a list of numbers. And at the school, we have the list of the names and the matching numbers. And then they have they would use a computer program or any type of algorithm to just randomly select numbers from each of those pools. That's it. Does that make sense? I mean, names don't go into it. Names don't come into it until there is a positive result for a test, and that's when a name would then be attached to a number, so we could meet with the student.
So you're saying there really would be, I mean, and I can kind of see this both ways. In other words, if there is someone who you suspect,
that has nothing to do with it.
that
Absolutely
person,
not. Absolutely
it's
not.
whoever you get.
That it's random. That's absolutely correct.
And
Yes, sir.
What's the projected cost of the testing, by that I mean the check that's written to the testing company? And also, what is the estimated cost? So I imagine in order for a program like this, the schools have to develop some type of small bureaucracy to administer these tests, keep records, contact parents, so on and so on. That is going to involve staff time. I don't expect the school to actually hire someone to do this, but it does take time away. It requires staff time. That equals dollars. So what is the cost of the testing? This is a check written to the testing company. I know it's an estimate, and what's the estimated cost of staff time?
Based on our numbers, which we estimate we have, if we were, for instance, to choose participants in athletics, that number, that pool, the testing pool, would be about 500 kids. Now, as we have 500 athletes, that's not 500 unique athletes, but 500 athletes, because we have many athletes that play more than one sport in a year. 10% of that is 50. Based on the proposal or just initial numbers that I've gotten from the testing company used by Orange County, the cost to the school, I believe, if I'm correct, would be $2,075. You are absolutely correct in that it will take some time on the part of one or more administrators to put the program together. The bulk of the time, we understand, is going to be in putting together the policy if we go that route. Some of that homework has already been done just in the course of my research. As far as the maintaining the list, and Mr. Cole can vouch for this, and I can as well, having been athletic director for 4 years, those lists are already maintained. So it's not a question of having to create a new list and spend a lot of time with data entry. A couple of the programs that we use, both for athletics and also for the school, can very easily generate the list of names that we need, and then it's just a matter of assigning a number to those names. And then we just, like I said earlier, the idea is we don't send names to the testing company. They get a batch of numbers. They randomly select a number. They send us the numbers. We match it to the name. We estimate that we would probably, if we were to do this, again, with our numbers, we would probably test 2 to 3 times during the season, maybe even during a semester, and probably be looking at, you figure a maximum number of 50 testers, so you're looking at 25 kids per semester.
But is there some sort of effort, some sort of estimate of the level of effort, the number of man hours that
Well,
would be?
Mr. Cole, if I could, Mr. Cole, who's had 3 years' experience with this, let him tell you his experience.
The same list that your athletic director would send to the Virginia High School League is the same list that I send to my assistant superintendent. Because you guys use Power School. We use Power School also. The Power School is downloaded to our school, which is the athletic director's
Scheduling software.
yeah, scheduling software that we use, and it's downloaded. And when I make a master eligibility list, for example, for football, and I send it to the high school league, that's the exact same list. I hit a button that goes to the assistant superintendent with student ID numbers.
And then as far as the testing itself, in talking to Mr. Cole before, let's say you do the testing on a Monday, you've got a list of 5 kids. You're probably looking at about 15 minutes, because we're not talking about a urine test. If we move forward with this, we would emulate, if that's the correct word, imitate maybe, what Orange County has been doing, which is a mouth swab test, and it doesn't require personnel, non-school personnel to come in. Basically, the person that's being tested is essentially handling the test swab themselves. When they're done, they themselves put it in the little beaker, they break the top off, they seal it, they write their number on it, and so you minimize the need for outside. Really, the only thing the only cost you're going to have with the outside agency is the cost of the test kits and then the cost of running the test, and that's it. And again, the price that I have based on our student population, or athletic population of 500 athletes, $2,075, I believe, for a year.
And that's under your, a base assumption of testing, what percentage of your
10%.
10%?
10%, 50 tests.
5 minutes, it's 5 minutes per kid.
I read a statistic today on American Academy of Pediatrics website that 45% of Department of Education's positives actually were false, but it triggers a need for a second test to confirm, and that test runs $80 to $200.
We haven't had any.
Well,
So my question was, if you had any, like if you got a positive, what is your next step? Don't you then have to?
There's an appeals process.
yeah, there's a process that,
But
and
no, the
again,
testing company automatically follows with a second test to confirm the results, correct?
that is my belief.
And that more sensitive assay triples the cost of the test.
Well, it may very well be with what you saw on the website that you were at, but with the company that we've been dealing with, that's not the information I'm getting. Ryan?
What is the company we're dealing with?
It's called Trident. Just
They're
like
Richmond,
Poseidon's
they're out of
spear.
Richmond?
They are.
And how do we transport our DNA to them?
The test samples are sent to the United States mail.
What happens if it's lost? Then my DNA, my child's DNA is out
So
there.
what happens-
Anybody's-
I know, one at a time, one at a time. This is Kelly.
What happens if it gets lost? My child's DNA is out there.
So far, in talking to Trident, they have not had that experience. So I don't know what to tell you. I would have to rely on the good faith of the United States Postal Service.
Have they ever been breached, you know? Has anybody ever come in and?
Not to my knowledge. Ryan, do you have another question?
So if we're still talking about our survey here, the Pride survey, I have to say this is an inaccurate survey for current students. 2014, the majority of our users, they came out 44 students between the juniors and seniors. None of those students are in this building today. Also, so there's, I mean, we're using old data to judge current students. That's not reasonable, that's suspicionless, it's unfair.
To that question, or just,
I'm telling you what's.
well, if you don't, I'm happy for you to make a comment, but if you could wait until I finish all the questions, that'd be even better.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Will you be recording positive and negative test results in students' records?
No, none of this will go onto the student's cumulative record. This is not something that and again, these are details that I have done a lot of research on as far as what other schools done. I have not included them in this presentation tonight, details like this, because we're still at the early stages. But I can tell you, one of the things that we look to maintain, and I know Orange County is going through the same thing, is maintaining anonymity. These are not things that go into the student record. They don't go to law enforcement. This program is not designed to catch anyone. It's designed, what Mark Cole told me, which I'll be honest with you, up until a year ago, I was on the fence about the idea. Until Mr. Cole came, and I talked to him at the VHSL meeting, at the spring meeting in Richmond, Virginia, it was about a year ago, and we were discussing it, and when he made the statement to me that he has had kids come to him and thank him for giving them a cool reason to say no. That was what made the light bulb go on for me. Now, back to what you were saying, this is not, we're not looking, this isn't a gotcha program. This is designed to give our kids another reason, another tool to be able to use to combat peer pressure, to combat the pressure that we know is out there. With all due respect to what was just said about the survey results, I understand that this survey was from the spring of 2014, 2 years ago. I would be willing to stake a significant portion of my salary that if we gave that survey again tomorrow, our results would not be very different. Fauquier County just released the survey they did. I was going through it last week, and the statistics are almost identical as far as use. And again, our numbers are not horrible when you compare them to regional and national averages, but 30% is 30%. Questions?
someone who's legitimately taking a drug that would give you a
That's-
positive, or even a positive.
The very first thing that, the very first thing that happens if there's a positive test is that the physician employed by the company, what is the acronym? Medical CMO, Chief Medical Officer, I believe. That person gets the name that goes with the number and contacts the parent, and the first question he asks, or she, is, are there some prescription medications that the child is taking? The
So
first,
then you're forced to reveal if your child is on antidepressants or something else that's.
Well, I think- I'm not-
Not your physician.
it's not, I don't know, I mean, I can't tell you that an antidepressant would trigger a positive test, but for instance, if your child had just had his or her wisdom teeth removed and was taking prescription pain medication, well then, obviously, that's going to cause a positive test. But that would not be counted as a positive test if the parent confirmed that.
I agree, but I think some antidepressants do show up as positives, and I
I
just
don't
think
know.
that's very, very personal and not the school's business.
Have you,
No, sir, we have not had any of that. In fact, when I sat down and called the parents, when the child was being tested, they revealed, most of the time reveal what drugs that the child might be taking so that, it doesn't get rid.
one of the things that, and what Mr. Cole is referring to, is when the students are selected for testing, every effort is made to contact the parent so that the parent, if the parent chooses to be, can be there on site when the testing occurs. Yes, question? Let me go all the way in the back because I haven't heard from you yet. Yes, ma'am.
Where's the testing done? On the school grounds, or do you have a sanction in place? Or what is
It
your
would-
thought process of where the testing's going to be?
Well,
Or
for instance-
if you impose this, how's that process going to work?
We would do it most likely in the nurse's office or perhaps an administrator's office. Again, it's not a urine test, it's a mouth swab. But we would do it in an office. Preferably the nurse's office would be my assumption, and I assume that's what happened. Mark?
Actually, we have ours done in a part of the school where, we keep it separate so that a kid can come in, and while that child's being tested, we go get another one, and we're calling mom and dad at the same time. When that child is finished being tested, they go out a different door, and then we rotate them around. So the only time that anybody knows that anybody's being tested is if that child tells his friends. So it's completely confidential, and nobody knows who's being tested unless they open them up.
How are you going to manage that with a school this size?
Yeah, that's my question, is how do you manage that?
Our small size presents a lot of challenges and you're absolutely correct. And that's not something yet that I've given, that any of us have given an enormous amount of thought to. I feel pretty confident that we can figure this out. But again, we're at the stage right now where we're just simply, floating the idea, so to speak. And then if we get the green light to go forward, we being the GAP committee, those are things that we would work out to everyone's satisfaction. Because, that's, anonymity is huge. It has to be huge, and we all get that. So that's, I can't give you, in other words, a specific answer now, because we have not thought every single process all the way through, but I can assure you we will if we go down this road. Yes, ma'am.
Why were none of the statistics on the Pride survey incorporating 10th grade? It went 6,
They were.
7, 8, 9, and then 11, 12.
Well, that was just on the first sheet that I showed you, just where I was picking out some of the high points that we considered. But when I showed you the bar graph, they incorporated 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
Oh, so they're...
A lot of that information too is publicly available. It's on, you go to board docs. It was presented at school board meetings over the past couple of years, and you can access that. Matter of fact, what I presented tonight, for the most part, has already been presented before, with the exception of, the intro page and the last page. I took PowerPoints that we have already used publicly, information we've already put out for the public to see, and there was nothing new, nothing that I,
Well, it was a pattern I saw repeatedly in research, the omission of 10th grade, leaping from 8, 9 to 11, 12 when I was doing research, and I wondered about it primarily relative to the fact that I saw that omission routinely.
Yeah, no, like I said, if you look at the bar graph, they include, for us, all 5 of our grade levels, in high school, which, you know, most high schools, Orange County, for instance, is 9 through 12, we're 8 through 12 here. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, question. Kind of piggybacking on what the gals back there said. I graduated from Rappahannock, small school,
So did I.
small community, you know, and that is what I loved about this place. We have such a small population of students. Why is this a necessary step instead of someone like yourself or a teacher or any number of staff that are here that can recognize a student with a problem, speak to them like a human being and not like a lottery number, put them through a random test?
Well, all of those things that you described do go on now. We, as you know, I can tell you in my 4 years as athletic director, it didn't happen often, but I can tell you that there were instances where coaches would talk to players because they had heard this or seen something that didn't look right and would sit down and have a heart-to-heart. The thing with the
Yeah,
random,
what has changed since then that GAP sees the need to?
because of the statistics that I showed you that reflected that we have in the neighborhood of 30% of our kids, which again, 30% of our kids total. Don't know exactly what percentage of those kids are that participates in extracurriculars, but still in all, 30% of our kids, which if you're looking at your junior and senior class, you're talking of in the neighborhood, I would say of about 40 kids who have self-reported that they have used drugs and alcohol in the last 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, when you say use drugs and alcohol or tobacco in the
Yes,
last
that
30
was in there
days,
as well.
that tobacco is included in that number. That is only that they've tried it. They're not.
Well, it does, yeah.
It's that they have tried it in the
Yes,
last.
well, they don't specify, the survey questions didn't, you know, they were saying, what have you used in the past 30 days, period. I mean, I can just go with what the survey questions said. Yes, ma'am?
How is it fair that in all the statistics, all you see is the students and not the staff?
It's, this, well, I don't, first of all, we don't have a pride survey for staff members that I know of. Second of all, I think I can state with a pretty fair degree of certainty that we don't, I'm not aware of any perception of a drug or alcohol abuse problem among our staff, whether it be our teachers or our coaching staff. I mean, that's,
Just curious.
okay. Jim, Racer.
Can, maybe the gentleman from Orange can answer this, but has it driven not to, maybe your perception of students at Orange, student athletes that were using drugs, your perception, have they given up the sport because they didn't want to fail the test? Because I see a lot of these kids, I spend time talking to them when I was coaching. If I thought something was going on, I tried to talk to them, but no, because I want to see them stay in school and stay on the team. I just want to make sure it doesn't, a lot of times they're going to take the easy way out, so they'll
Right.
quit.
Honestly, I can't say that it has turned any kid away. I'm more worried about the $100 per kid that I'm charging them to play. We have an activity fee.
Okay.
We worry about the kids that don't show up because they can't afford it, and mom and dad are too proud to, you know, want to take a scholarship from us.
Yeah.
But Mike, you know, we know these kids from the time that they're, you know, 5th, 6th graders, and they're playing middle school sports, and we see them coming, and my coaches are watching, and if all of a sudden one of them doesn't show, we go after them. In other words,
Can you give
why
us
aren't
some
you out?
statistics on your school to give us a sense of relativity for the scale of ours?
What's that, honey?
Can you give us some statistics regarding your school to
What's
give
your
us a
average
sense of
class?
relativity?
You're a 4A.
We're a 5A school, we have 1,500 kids in our school.
That's grades 9 through 12.
9 through 12, so we're much bigger than you, but it's a one-horse town, just like Rappahannock. There's only one high school in Orange County. So, but I mean, obviously our county is heavily populated than yours. Class size, well, you have 25 to 30 probably.
No, but I mean like junior class, senior class,
Uh,
you're talking about 200, 300 kids.
No, close to 400. Yeah.
Camille, I'll get right back to you. Camille?
So, okay, so I love the idea of having an excuse not to drink or smoke pot at a party for a kid. Hey, you know, I'm in season, I'm not. That's, I love, that's great. It's like, my question is, when you do get a positive, and the CMO calls this parent and says, hey, is your kid taking any medication that would make this come out positive? No, and the parent is overworked, underpaid, blah, 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 busy, and now, and of course we want to catch a kid who has a problem. Is the school willing to help with our tight budgets if the kid needs a psychologist, if their insurance, we all know about insurance these days. If this kid does need help, if this kid does need whatever, you've opened a door. Of course, I'm glad that the kid, if you just tried it once, I'm like, but if it's a problem, if it's a consistent problem.
What's the follow-through?
How are you gonna help this parent help this kid? Or are you just gonna say, you can't play basketball anymore?
Well, first
So
of
that's what
all,
I wonder, what's the follow-up that the
that
school
wouldn't,
plays?
and again, they wouldn't be told you can't play sports anymore, first of all, not, first offense. And as I said earlier, and again, we have not fleshed these things out yet. We, as in
Well, I mean, I'm sure you had a
in
positive.
Orange
No,
County.
ma'am.
None.
No, ma'am,
Okay.
3 years, and I've not had a single problem. The one
Okay.
thing I really
So
want
from the company, I'm sure the company has had to tell you, yes, we've had a positive, and this is what schools do when they get a positive.
Well, what we would, you talked about
That's a big
referring
piece.
to psychologists. I would assume, and again, I'm kind of talking off the cuff here,
Right.
but my assumption would be, we would do the same thing we would do for any kid that we thought needed some help. We would find community resources that parents could avail themselves of, and you might be able to speak better to that, Jen, but am I correct in saying that? Money is not necessarily the obstacle, neither is insurance. There are community resources that can be available, and you want to speak to them.
So what's the point of doing a test then if you're not gonna take them off the team? To me, that's the whole catalyst for having,
The
being
point,
tested during season so they don't do drugs. If they have a positive,
okay, back to Orange County, for instance, the way they do it, and this is, I think Culpeper might be mirroring this as well. First, and again, keep in mind, Orange has not had to utilize their policy because they have to have a positive test. But for Orange County, first positive test, as I said earlier, the student will be suspended from 20% of the remaining games. If it was the end of the season, that suspension would carry over into the next season they were going to play. They would still be allowed to practice with the team and meet with the team, because the idea is the last thing you want to do is throw them out. You want to keep them in a safe and healthy and positive environment and work to help them. Another part of it, go ahead.
Well, it really takes 3 strikes within a 6-year period, and it's so-called the death penalty. The death penalty is, okay, you don't play anymore, but we still don't give up on you. I take it you're a counselor, is that correct? Okay, but the whole idea is that if one tests positive, the most important person in this now is also all of a sudden the school guidance counselor. We have our head guidance counselor is trained, for that type of thing, and they have to take a course with my head
okay, you said
guidance.
that type of thing.
Well,
Training
and
for- are they trained
if they
in drug
test
counseling?
positive, yeah,
So
if they
they're
test positive,
Drug
they,
counselors.
yes, yeah.
Or
And we're
guidance
going to get help, not only that counselor, but, through the county
Community support.
community
Right, so
support.
that's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
is there that support to help
And that would
a
be
parent who might not?
part of the responsibility of the school when if we move forward with this, is to put together, and I for one would not condone moving forward until we knew we had a package that we could offer in good conscience to any kid and their family if that kid had a positive test.
What is the policy through Orange County? You are asking the students, student athlete, drama band, whatever, you're asking them, actually, you're requiring them to potentially be randomly tested. Are the coaches subjected to the same treatment?
No, ma'am, they're not.
And again, it goes back to what I said earlier with a similar question to that. To the best of my knowledge, and maybe I'm biased because I'm a former coach, an AD, an employee of the school system, but to the best of my knowledge, there's not a perception in the community that the teachers of Rappahannock County or the coaching staff have got an illicit drug problem. Now, we may We may have coaches and teachers who legally consume alcohol. They're all over 21. But again, I don't see that perception, and it has certainly not been brought to any of our attention. What we do have is survey results from students themselves, and this isn't what teachers thought students were doing. It's what students said they were doing. That tells us that up to 30% of them, do use alcohol and drugs, and they're all under 21.
How is this, two questions. One, has it reduced drug use in Orange? Do you have results that show it's actually been effective in reducing drug use? That's number one. Number two, how is this better than drug sniffing dogs sniffing the whole school? You still do that? Is that done here? And I don't know.
I can't answer that question. I know it's been done in the past, but I think that's a different, to me, is a different arena as what you're trying,
I guess to me, that says, there's a drug problem here, we're gonna sniff everybody on the school and see if there's an issue, like that.
yeah, but that's tougher. I defer
The
to you.
survey just showed that the use is not here at the school.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for reminding me of that. What
Okay.
you got to remember, and I think I said this earlier, what the survey results show us is not so much that kids are doing drugs at school or drinking at school. It's that when they're doing it at their house or a friend's house, typically on the weekend.
The biggest thing that I can
So
tell
the
you,
other question is, has it reduced?
the biggest thing that I can tell you that this has done for my kids, and this is the reason I pulled him in, was that we've given our kids the opportunity to say no, because they still want to be social and they still want to go to the parties. And when they're at the parties, they can absolutely look at their friends in their face and say, no, I do not want to drink. No, I do not want to hit on that joint, because there's a possibility that when I walk into school on Monday morning, I might get tested. So the peer pressure is just enormous. We've given our kids a reason to say, no, I don't want to do that.
But do you have information that it's actually?
The information's there. We've had zero.
Well, that's what
Have
I
you
would.
researched?
Well, yeah,
Have you re-administered the pride test since you implemented the test?
Have we redone it?
Did you do a pride test?
And let me answer that. I don't know the answer to that, and it's a great question, and I'll tell you why, because it's something that I've thought of as far as a dissertation topic, to do that type of study. Right now, the best answer Mark could give you, and the same answer that Lynchburg City Schools gave, was that when they instituted testing, they had few, if any, in their case, none, positive results. To me, that's an answer. Now, I understand what you're saying. Compare survey results from before testing and then after. If we go down that road of testing here, that is most certainly something that we would do, because we do plan to give the survey again. But I can't answer for Orange County. I can go later and do some research, and I'm willing to bet that they've done the pride survey and then look at what the data was prior to instituting testing and afterwards, but I haven't done that up to this
So
point.
they have no way of knowing if the extracurricular activities students were the positive answers to the pride testing prior to when they implemented the randomized testing.
I'm not going to say they have no way of knowing. I'm just going to say I don't know if they do or not.
Okay.
Back in the back again for me.
Okay, so you said the cost for this was $2,075. So what I'd like to know is that a figure you're gonna use? Are you gonna, is there still money that's gonna be in the budget for, education or one-on-one, like for instance, if you have someone come talk to the school body or any education or one-on-one, which most of the time you want to believe that someone will do that for the good of coming to talk to them, like Kim McKiernan did. I understand that. But is there still money in the budget for real education or working with peer-to-peer for education with drugs or alcohol abuse or whatever? What I'm trying to figure out is this testing going to take, is this going to take the place of some real education?
My answer to that would be I cannot imagine that the school board or my superintendent or either of my principals would take $2,000 out of the DARE program or out of the after prom or pre-prom program or any of the other things that we currently do now just to pay for drug testing. I can't tell you where the $2,075 will come from. I don't know that answer, but I'm pretty confident in telling you that it isn't going to come from another program that we're doing now. We're not going to shortchange something else to do this new thing, if we do this. Jim?
Did you have to personally ask Madison or any of the schools why they discontinued?
I've only, you know, it's almost borders on hearsay for me to repeat this, but basically, and the conversation that I've had with a couple people from Madison was that the proposal was made, public hearing was held, just like what we're doing now, and when it came before the school board the next time, it was not, that was the end of it. Now, you know.
So they never instituted it?
They never instituted it,
Okay.
to the best of my
Your
knowledge.
thing said it was instituted in Madison, and they had zero, or if
There was who considered it.
Yeah, no, that was Madison,
someone
Henry,
had zero positives. and
yeah, that
they
was
dropped it.
Lynchburg City Schools.
Okay.
Yeah, they had, yeah, but no, Madison's never adopted it. Madison, Caroline, Henry, and one other county I know of considered it, but never adopted it as of yet. Yes, ma'am.
This addresses the use of illicit drugs, but as of late, it's prescription drug use.
Well,
That's an
and
epidemic.
I think, and that's probably poor choice of words on my part, because most of the terminology that I recall from TRIBE, it says illegal/unauthorized drugs. So for instance, if somebody tests positive for, you know, whatever the active ingredient is in Percocet or oxycodone, that's going to come up. And that again is why the first thing they do is call, is your child on a prescription for something that would cause this positive? And if the answer is no, then it's the same thing. So in other words, whether it's an illegal drug, like obviously heroin is illegal, or is it an unauthorized drug, it's going to catch that.
So you'll have a list, a table of all the different prescription drugs?
There is, I have seen from Trident, at least an abbreviated list of the things that their tests will detect. I don't have it at the tip of my tongue, but that is information.
No, I
that
mean
is-
like the committee, when you're proposing.
Oh, yeah.
You'll have a big table.
I'm sure Trident would be
Drugs.
happy to give us the names of the drugs and the chemical signals, or, you know, I mean, yeah, I have no doubt that they would tell us, they would definitely tell us exactly what their test can find.
And is that what Orange County does?
They
And
use
they still
Trident.
have negative results even with prescription drugs being flagged?
They've had no positive results in 3 years.
Is that because the testing population is the least likely population in school?
I'm sorry, you asked me.
I'm sorry, I keep hearing the statistic about, you know, 0 positive tests or 4 positive tests in 3 years, but I can't help but think that the extracurricular activity students are the ones least likely to be given alcohol and drugs. Now, I understand why they're being tested, I know it has to do with the Supreme Court.
It may very well be
I-
that statistically, a smaller percentage of extracurricular participants choose to use alcohol and drugs than the percentage of students who do not participate. I honestly don't know that answer. The Pride survey, as near as I can tell, did not give us that type of information. Back to what I said earlier, however, you know, the truth is, if we could do it legally, I would propose random testing all of our students, to give all of our students and our parents another tool to help them fight the peer pressure. But we can't. I mean, the Supreme Court, I think that the court case, it came out of a high school in Washington State where the administration felt that they were having a very real problem because their athletes, who were the leaders of their schools, had a reputation for being very hard partiers, and it was affecting the rest of the school. They were following in their footsteps, so they started to random test their athletes. They got sued, and went all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court upheld it, said if it's an extracurricular activity, then you can do it. That's your legal back. Yes, Ryan?
Just to speak to that case,
All right, question or comment? If we're not comments yet.
All right, here, we'll go with the question.
Okay, good.
Tagging on to maybe his question a little bit, is it just in-season athletes being tested? Because I have
Yes.
friends, I have knowledge of people who specifically stop their usage during season because they're worried about performance.
It's in-season athletes, to answer your question.
And then, so
If they're participating in an extracurricular activity, if that's all that's legal to test. If they're not participating, legally, no school can test them.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that
So
it might
meaning
not
not outside the duration of that given season?
Correct.
be, it might not be as preventative as we're thinking if some of our athletes are.
And it may not be, but again, I go back
There aren't kids
to,
using drugs that you know of.
I go back, wait a minute, okay, let's not start crosstalk. Let's not start crosstalk yet. We'll get to comments, I promise. But let me finish question first. Ryan, let me go to your mom first.
What are any legal ramifications? We're talking about all this stuff, but what's our legal responsibility? Have we talked to our legal counsel? I mean, can we get sued for this? Can you be sued for this by a
Well,
parent?
given that the Supreme Court upheld it,
Well,
I would have to
that's-
say you
but
probably
have to
could
have
get
probable
sued, but I
cause.
don't
That's
think
not
that they
the
would
whole
win.
thing. Yes, they upheld it, but you have to have probable cause to administer this stuff.
I have plenty of court cases here that have.
You have to have
And I'll be happy to look at them later, but I mean,
But
I'm telling
saying
you,
need to
all right,
contact our legal counsel.
4 public high schools that we know
Well,
of
I have four
in the
that
state of
have it.
Virginia are doing it now. Orange County's been doing it for 3 years. Come here.
I would like you, in your research, to do a little bit more. For instance, with ADHD students, Concerta is a methamphetamine. A lot of parents don't, I know IEPs, things like that, you're gonna know, guidance counselors. But if a student is tested, and obviously, and this is why I have a really hard time with your statistics, that 0 have come out. There are a lot of high school kids on Concerta, and a lot of them do sports.
But with Concerta,
It's a methamphetamine.
but if it generated a positive test, remember, the first thing that's going to happen, the chief medical officer for the
Right,
testing
and
company
that's
will
a
call a
HIPAA.
parent.
You're having someone you don't even know call you
But is it- but
and
is-
ask you a question
but is it
about their
not-
health. I'm a big
But
private
it's
person
not
as
your,
far as-
it's
excuse
not
me.
your
Hold on.
position.
Jen,
That's what I'm
let me
saying.
defer to Jen for one moment.
Let me just finish.
All right, finish.
My problem with it is that, HIPAA is thrown around at us all over the place. I can't talk to you, HIPAA. I can't talk to you, HIPAA. I can't talk to you, HIPAA. And here we are, and mind you, I like the idea. I'm very scared about private information. When you said the DNA getting lost, I never thought of that. I thought, well, because that piece of paper with that swab has a whole lot of information. So I didn't know if there's any other carrier way we could transport it, rather than just through the US mail.
I'm sure there are
That
other
could be
ways to
tracked.
choose to do it. Yes, Mr. Ubben?
We use that for blood tests for DUIs. It is certified through the court.
Okay.
You send it through the certified mail.
You-
It's a branch of the federal government.
Okay, so that would
It
be
holds up in
a
court.
safety net for that getting lost, that private information.
My question goes back to what was raised previously, in terms of the legal ramifications, especially with a school that's small, where privacy will be difficult, if not impossible to maintain, and something like a false positive could be very damaging to a student's future. Have you had legal counsel weigh in with an opinion about instituting this program?
We have not,
And
but-
if not, why not?
Well, first of all, because we're very much in the early stages of this. As I said earlier, remember, this is simply a public information meeting. I'm going to the school board next Tuesday. The school board ultimately has to decide if they want to move forward. If they give me a green light, and I say me, meaning the YAP committee a green light, then I suspect that yes, we would seek legal counsel. We would make sure all of our ducks are in a row as far as that's concerned. But as far as why I haven't done that yet, we've just gathered preliminary information, gathered information from other schools that have done this. And I've done a lot of other research and have stuff ready to go, but I'm not going to roll it forward or go public with it until my school board tells me, okay, we want to do this. But they may very well tell me, no, you don't want to do it, and that's the end of it. Jen?
This is kind of a question slash comment, and I'm going to step out of my CPS role and step back into a few years ago when I was a parent of an athlete and also a parent of a severe ADHD child who was on stimulant medication. If I remember correctly, on the DHSL forms, don't you have to disclose medication and
On the physical
physician's
form. On the physical form.
On the
You do,
physical
yes.
form, which is filed
Yes,
under DHSL.
absolutely, you do.
So automatically, the school and DHSL should be aware of any kind of amphetamines or methamphetamines
Prescription
your
medication.
child should be on. So So I think the whole argument of privacy is a moot point.
And on top of that, at Orange County High School, it's the school nurse who's
Yes,
administering the test.
if the school system is not aware that your child is on a medication, they absolutely should be in case there is an emergency. Because that can make a huge difference in how a doctor treats your child, especially a child on a stimulant. That is a very controlled substance, it is a psychotropic medication, and it can get you in an emergency situation.
Well, that's why I mentioned the IEP earlier. Of course you do that. That's why I mentioned that, what you just said.
Well, even if my child did not have an IEP and has been on a stimulant medication since he was 8, and he's now an adult. And he played lacrosse since he was in, I don't know, forever. Even when he was a little guy, he played little league lacrosse and football and always in high school. So I know I had to put all that information
On
on
the
his
physical
forms
forms.
with VHSL too.
Question?
Does the VHSL form though, that is not HIPAA approved, from my understanding. It gives you permission and the information in an emergency situation, but then the parent has to come in and fill out all of the HIPAA regulations, all of the consent forms, everything. The hospital can triage emergency, but they cannot do anything else until the parent fills out all that information.
Well,
Or
but
we
again,
have given you permission to
I think
fill
we're
it out
getting a
for
little
us.
into the weeds, however, because again, the question is, I think what the root question was, if your child's taking a type of prescription medication for ADHD, is that going to generate a positive result? Answer is probably yes, but again, that's going to come out.
That
First
was my
thing that's going
question.
to happen.
You said you had 0 positive results. I
Yes.
have a hard time with that statistic. I'd like you to research that statistic from other counties a little bit more, for my benefit, that
Well,
because I have a hard time
it
making
could very well be
decisions.
too, Camille,
Some
that
kids are
that
smart.
it could very well be that there were some initial positives, but then when the doctor called and found out there was a prescription, the school never knew about it.
Okay,
So is
that's not.
I don't know, but he wouldn't know. I don't know. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. All he knows is they have not had any reports
So that's another
of a
piece that we
positive
need
test
to
that they've had to act
know.
on.
If it's an
That's
initial
fine.
positive and that CMO says to the parent, okay, Joe parent, is your kid on this? Yes, he's on this. Okay, I'm not, so that does not get reported back to the school as a positive with an explanation. The school doesn't know about that positive with explanation ever.
Not to
Okay.
my knowledge. Yeah.
So, if what I read in the newspaper said it did not test for alcohol, correct? So,
They reported it incorrectly.
so it can test for alcohol?
There's 2 separate tests. The alcohol test is, if I remember correctly, is an instant response test.
Ours is immediate.
Yeah, there's, and then the meaning that it changes,
If
like,
you drunk that moment?
I don't know, if it's, however it goes and test if you've had alcohol in your system, how far back it goes, I honestly don't know off the tip of my tongue, but the alcohol test that Trident gives, do you know offhand how far back it'll go? Is it 48 hours?
Yeah, it's nowhere near what.
It's nowhere near as far back as the drug test, but the alcohol test gives you instant results. You know, you and the kids sitting there know immediately whether it's positive or negative. Then the drug test is what is actually sent off. So the paper was incorrect when they said they weren't alcohol. That was all. It was an oversight.
Is there an additional charge for the alcohol test?
No, that's included. The money, the price I quoted you earlier is inclusive. Alcohol and drug testing for approximately 50 tests in the course of a year. Yes, ma'am, the green sweater.
A couple of things related to this whole, number one, I read,
All right, let's finish. Do we have any more questions? And I'm happy to go.
well, this is a
comments.
question, but
All right.
I have to give you context.
All right, give me context.
I read repeatedly that there is no single drug test that you can give that will assay for more than certain groups of things. For example, you can do an assay for opiates, you can do a test for alcohol, you can do one for amphetamines. There is no one test that combines them all. And that the window of testability is very, very, as you know, for example, alcohol, is very narrow. So for the PRIDE survey, like it showed weekend use of alcohol is really a ton of where the action's going on. How do we reconcile him getting 0 positives? Could it be because we're not testing for things we can capture, in which case, how much value is there really to this for us?
Well, I think the answer to that question is odd. It's been asked several times tonight. I'm sorry, I have to go with Mark Cole. I think the answer to the question of why they have no positive tests is because their students took it serious. They're student athletes. They want to play sports. So they gave it up. I'm not, you talk about assaying for different tests. Again, Trident Corporation is the name of the company that does the testing. They have a website. I'm sure you can go and you can see exactly what I've been told, what Orange County operates under. They have a drug test that tests for a wide screen of different types of illegal or unauthorized drugs, and then they have an alcohol test. And again, back to the no positive test for Orange County, I applaud their student athletes for not having, and I hope
We don't even know that that's the case, is my point, right?
Well, I suppose there are never.
Because no one's done any follow-up, so we have no conclusive results either way, correct?
I would disagree. I'd say your conclusive results are the fact that they've had no positive tests.
It couldn't be that Trident's testing methodology is poor. No?
What I would say is, rather than get too wrapped up in what has or hasn't happened in Orange, I would rather focus our energies. If we go forward with this here, I can tell you one thing for sure. If we do this, I would definitely recommend and hope to see follow through that we do another survey, because the lady pointed out over there earlier, it would be nice to see if there's any difference in the survey results before and after testing, if we go the route of testing.
There are
That's a great
many
follow-up.
aspects of education that have become big business for a lot of ancillary companies, and drug testing has become one of them. And I'm very concerned about how we create some structure around it to support its validity, particularly post-institution. If you institute it, then, how do you, and what sort of a plan might YAP structure to support that kind of follow-up? In other words, for example, there's data all over the place showing dare date programs really just don't work very well. And an enormous amount of money gets sunk into them. So how do we analyze statistically, post-instituting a program, that this program is having the impact that we see?
Well, two ways.
Particularly
that I
when
can
we're
say off the top
testing
of
for
my head.
things that are hard
One,
to capture.
did you get any positive results or not? 2, do a pride survey after you've instituted the testing. But again, these are hurdles that we may or may not go over in the future. All right, we're going to do one more question, then I'm going to open it up for a little bit for comments. But let's do one last question.
Okay, so when you go to the school board next week, are you going to have very specific points of, is it going to be just blanket, we want to do this program and then we're going to figure it out? Or because you did say, and I get that you're going to go through hurdles, but what I'd really like to know is are you going to go to the school board and say, we're going to test athletes, extracurricular? I'm a little confused that you will go to the school board with kind of this big open policy that doesn't have all the structures. And I get that you have to go through the motions and learn as you go. But my question is, what are you asking the school board to vote on? Like is it just going to be, we're going to test kids and we're going to figure that out after you tell me yes? Or are you going to go to the school board next week and say, we're going to test athletes, we're going to test extracurricular, we're going to test anybody competing? I'm a little confused. It seems a little vague.
What I would go to the school board and ask for, and by the way, I believe all of our school board members are here tonight.
Yeah.
What I would go to the school board and ask for is permission to go forward to develop a program, which I would then bring back to them. And I say it's the YAP committee, it's not Jimmy Swiller's program. That we would develop a program, fully develop a proposal, which then would be brought back to the school board for their approval. The only thing we'd be asking for on Tuesday is, do you want us or do you not want us to go forward with this? Period. And that's it. Now, we've been here for about an hour. I can turn my mic off. Can everybody hear me? I think a lot of people have, in the course of questions, also voice comments, and that's fine. The one thing I would remind everybody before I solicit comments, please remember what I said earlier. We might disagree on the specifics, but I think we all have the same thing at heart. We want to do what's best for our kids. Some of us may think drug testing is great. Others may think it's a horrible invasion of our civil rights. But we all are trying to do something positive for our kids. So please, if you want to make a comment, please make it. Please be positive. And I tell you what, I'll start on that side and just kind of go forward. If you want to make a comment, put your hand up. Let me know I recognize you. Pardon me? They absolutely. You can come to the mic if you want. I think the acoustics in here are pretty good, but you are. I'll even turn it on for you.
Hello, my name is Christine Smith. I live in Sperryville, and Ms. Johnson is my school board representative. Please do not mistake anything that I'm about to say for my condoning the use of illicit substances, alcohol, or drugs by our high school students. I have 2 students in Rappahannock County Schools myself. My son is very active in extracurricular activities, my older son, and he is a very serious student, and he's a little horrified that I'm here tonight, but oh well. I would like to say that when I heard that this was being brought before our school board, I was a little aghast that something like this had evolved in such a small school. I went on to do research on a larger scale, including the National Institute of Health website, which listed about half a dozen studies, and their approaches and research and findings regarding randomized drug testing in high schools. There were several, about half a dozen included in their research, and their final statement on the whole matter was, because of conflicting findings on student drug testing, more research is needed. I do not think we should be sinking money into something that more research is needed on, period, the end. I particularly believe this because when I attended the Board of Supervisors meeting on Monday, there was $50,000 that the school asked to receive that they did not have included in their budget. So when things are being sliced and diced, I think something of such dubious merit should be the first to go. I applaud Mr. Cole for coming on multiple occasions to speak to the people of Rappahannock County. I wish that the previous occasions on which he spoke had been recorded so I could review them at home at my leisure and see how they apply to what is going on now. I thank people who have taken it upon themselves to come out and record these important meetings so that people will know, as this process evolves, what we have gotten ourselves into. The anecdotal reporting that Mr. Cole has made to Rappahannock County has been very inspiring, but it is an anecdote. It is not something we should be spending money based upon. I went on to the Orange County School Board website, and I found that despite what was described as a supportive program, to me, the measures involved and outlined in how they talked to their students and treated their students after a positive drug test were very punitive in my opinion, including a 10-day initial suspension policy for the first offense. And for a college-bound senior or any college-bound aspiration having high school student, that would be incredibly detrimental to their future.
And excuse me for interrupting. Do you need a 10-day suspension from school?
Yes, sir.
I don't think that's the case for a lot.
I looked it up, and I'll be happy to pass on the document to the school board members.
That's a child that came to school either hired from.
Yeah, I think
That's not a
may
random
very well
drug
be.
testing app.
But anyway, I'm sorry.
But my
I should have
point is,
interrupted.
you haven't had a positive, so you don't actually know what you will do with them.
Well, they have a policy. No,
Well,
yeah.
I've read the policy, and it is very punitive. And why would you treat someone using on their own time differently than someone using at school? If you see hardly anyone is using at school, and everybody's using on the weekends. There's a problem there, don't you think? I didn't interrupt you when you were making your comments, by the way. My point would be that anecdotal stories, no matter how inspiring they are, have simply not been borne out by the national research conducted by peer-reviewed scholarly articles at the National Institute of Health that I encourage everyone here to Google. They're out there, many of them. My bottom line would be, please, just because the Supreme Court has said we can do this, doesn't mean we should do this. Please, to all the school board members here tonight, do not greenlight this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Courtney, sure.
Good evening. I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. Most of you all know me. My name is Courtney Atkins. I have 2 children in Rappahannock County Public Schools in the elementary school, so this would be a future thing for them. But I also am the head coach for the varsity volleyball team. And I think I'd like to reiterate that what we're here for is the safety of our children. And we can do lots of research. We can go and we can Google things. We can look up on websites. We can find out all the information you want to find on the internet. Trust me, if you want your point made, you will find it on the internet. But I'm here to tell you, I'm with these children a lot out of my life. I am here with them for about 4 months out of my life. They are like my children when I spend time with them. I walk these halls, I see them, I hear them, and I know there are things going on in the school that are not what we want for our children. We've had a student tell us he knows that kids have used, not in season, but they wait till after season. That's a problem in and of itself. If we're thinking about the safety of our kids, if your child is out speeding, would you not want the police officer to maybe pull them over and give them a ticket before they wreck their car and they die? Would you not want to know if your kid is failing a class? Would you not want to know before they fail the entire year? This is a helpful program. This is not something to say, I see Johnny doing this, so guess what, let's stick him. That's not what this is about. This is about the safety of our children and getting them before it's too far gone to bring them back. Because as a parent, I would want to know if my child is experimenting with anything, to know that I can get them help before they turn out to be 25 on a street somewhere and can't get themselves off of drugs. So that is my main concern, is the safety of the students. And my other thing is, why are we so afraid of setting a high standard? Why are we so afraid to say to other schools and to other communities, we're setting a standard that says we don't want this for our kids. We want to give them a way to say no. We want to give them a way, if they are doing drugs, to get help. Kids don't know how to ask sometimes. They don't know how to go to a parent or a coach or a teacher. And so I think, yes, we are taking part of our school population. And I'm so glad that someone mentioned how small our school system is, because when you're talking about almost 30%, which I know the statistics were about 2 years ago, I guarantee you that number is just about the same, if not higher at this point, because of what I've seen and what I've heard in the last 5 years of being a coach in this school. So, with that small school, I guarantee you we are getting a population, if they're in band, if they're in sports, you are going to capture a large group of people when you already have a small school system. I'd say the majority of our students participate in some sort of competitive program, whether it be quiz bowl or band or sports. So I think we are going to grasp a large amount of our population because we are so small. And so I would just like to say that that's where I'm coming from, as a safety, giving the kids a way to say no, and setting a standard. It's okay to set a high standard for your school and your students. It doesn't mean that we're punishing. We're not here to punish. We want to say to everyone else, we are here and this is what we expect. When my players step onto my court, they know that I expect high standards from them, and they expect the same from me. Thank you.
Makes no difference to me.
Two comments. First, They talked about the DNA in the mail. I would suggest you find out what happens to the DNA at the lab. Even though it's anonymous, this is a small population. It can be aggregated over the year of testing. That's worth money to somebody, even without names. It's a population DNA study. So that lab may give us a cut rate because they're selling information on the DNA on basically this subpopulation. Because we're not a big school. So that gives a little extra oomph to a collective DNA body, that could make some money. So you need to find that out. Second comment is, I think that the school needs to lead by example. I'm for the testing, but the coaches and teachers need to be randomly tested also. And you can run one coach through every testing or come up with some random factor along with a couple of teachers. And yes, I know that it's legal for them to drink on the weekends, that's fine, but still illegal drug use or unauthorized, prescription med use is still not acceptable. So they need to be run through it the same as our athletes. And that way you'll know that you don't have any abuse problem as much as you know that you won't have a student use problem because you use both terms there, abuse and use. But again, you're leading by example. That's good.
You want to come, Chris?
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Good thing about small just to answer a couple questions. So you had asked about the Pride Survey. No, we haven't had one this year, and no, they are not specific to students and extracurricular activities. These tests we're doing a lot of talking about alcohol. And the cotton swab test that we're implementing, it is not effective for testing alcohol, whoever had asked that question. I'd also like to bring up a point. Our neighboring counties don't matter when we're talking about us. Yes, Fauquier has problems, Orange County may have problems, Culpeper may have problems, but we are very, 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 very different from those counties. If we're trying to make ourselves the same as them in this instance, if we bring it to another instance, they have a lot of development and growth. This county, we don't have a lot of development and growth. So we can't pick and choose when or when not we are the same as other counties. I'd also like to bring up a couple of court cases here, just for everybody's knowledge on the GCs, because he's done a lot talking about Supreme Court cases. I found the one that he's talking about, I believe, or it's a very similar case, New Jersey versus TLO.
That was one.
Yeah, okay. The reason why they're doing this is because at this high school they had probable cause, and this is what this issue is coming down to. We do not have probable cause for a random drug test because, believe it or not, your DNA is your property as an American citizen. In this instance, they had reasonable cause because the students were in a state of rebellion at their school. Okay? The athletes were known, they were doing really, really hardcore drugs. We're talking about amphetamines, opioids, that could cause physical harm and did cause physical harm. Plenty of reasonable cause there, obviously. Here, however, we do not have it. I believe as the newspaper reported, 1,000 school population, 44 students may or may not be seriously doing drugs. Because also, I'll remind us, on the Pride Survey, it has varying degrees of what you've done in the past 30 days, because I've taken the survey a couple of times here. We have, yes, it asks you if you've had legit use of the drugs, repeated habitual use. But it also says, hey, did your dad give you a sip of beer in the past 30 days? Okay, that's not a dramatic use of drugs. Okay, that does not constitute enough evidence for reasonable cause. And so, under TLO, a search is ordinarily justified at a start when educators have reasonable grounds for suspecting that a search will uncover evidence that a student has violated the law. We don't have that here today. Maybe just to expand it a little bit to a different situation. I know it's not the same situation at the school, but just bringing in another drug testing thing to put in perspective. We have a city's waste department. They're trying to require their employees to undergo drug testing like this. However, the court decided that the testing scheme at issue, which did not rely on individualized suspicion, we don't have that here, was unreasonable, even though public safety and employee health were legitimate government interests, as there are interests. So again, if you do not have the probable cause, you cannot jump straight to the test. You need the probable cause, which we don't have, because it was not based on individualized suspicion. It is a random test being given to random students. Nothing specific there, nothing concrete. Then in Brooks v. East Chambers, the Fifth Circuit Court ruled unconstitutional. Again, the suspicionless drug testing of students wishing to participate in extracurricular activities. In this decision, the court concluded that the justifications for its policy did not meet the compelling criteria necessary to undertake a search without reasonable suspicion. The court additionally noted that drug testing was intrusive. There was no evidence of drug problem or greater safety risk among those subject to test, and that policy was not likely to accomplish its ostensible goals. And just to run in a couple extra points, like we brought up, we are already struggling budget-wise, like she had said. We don't have any concrete proof. We have a lot of stories being thrown around. Again, we do not have a legal parameters for this because there is no probable cause. We are already asking for $30,000 to $50,000 in addition to a possibly $2,500 more being added on. Again, just to reiterate, we don't know where the DNA is going. That's our property. We don't know what's going on with that. We know it's going to this company. DNA info can be easily hacked. Guess what? Once that system is hacked, it's hacked. Your DNA is everywhere.
What Brian, I would ask you to repeat about this so we have a talk.
We'll get there. Federal and state law, as I'm reminding everybody, trumps VHSL guidelines. So what I'm talking about with this probable cause is federal and state law under the 4th and 14th Amendments of our state and U.S. constitutions. Okay, that trumps VHSL guidelines. Also, a concern that was given to me by the students, because I am lucky enough to be our president of the student government. It was brought forward to my attention that the sheriff's department may try to use this unjustly to find its potential targets because the school system is going to know. And unfortunately, I assume the school board will have knowledge of who the student is. Will the school board have knowledge of who the student is? They will not. Okay, good. I can give people that definitive answer. We can.
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan.
You know everybody? Ben Franklin said, we quote right here that I want to leave everybody with tonight. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. You are an American, you have your rights. You are an American because you have your rights. Do not give up your rights.
Thank you. Most of you know who I am here. First things first, Sheriff's Department employees aren't employees of the school. We have nothing to do with them as far as administration or anything like that. They control nothing we do. Second thing is, I've heard a lot of numbers thrown around. There's one key number here, and that's the number 1, because if it saves one child, nothing else matters. That's my opinion. Thank you.
We all want to save children. I mean, I'm not saying anything, I like the program, I like the idea. My issue is with process and policy. And for the school board members that are here, from what I'm gauging, our current code that an athlete will sign says, I promise not to do drugs, alcohol, blah, 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 while I'm in school, or whatever. I'm assuming we're going to have a new one that says, agree to be random drug tested.
If this.
Okay, so that being said, if you do decide to go through with that and put that new statement in the student athlete extracurricular policy, please ask your legal, if what happens if a parent says, you know, I don't agree to be random drug tested, but my child still has a right to play football. What are you gonna do? I'm just saying as my comment.
Yeah.
Please think through everything, because I hate to see us on the news again or something, you know, oh, they didn't dot their I's and cross their T's. You know, do I have, I would probably sign it, but do I have a right as a parent to say, no, you know, I don't give you permission to random drug test my child. Are you gonna take playing football away from me? So just make sure you really look legally at everything. And that's my view, it's HIPAA, legal, that's it. I am a parent who is greatly fearful of drugs, and my stepfather was the former director of the catching and Pennsylvania Addiction Treatment Center. My mother is an LCSW who takes care of drug addicted teen moms. I've seen it, and it's bad. So don't take our questions, those of us who are questioning and asking questions, don't take it as, oh, they don't want to do it because X, Y, Z. Take it as liberty, one, but also you gotta make sure you've crossed all of them. Do everything. Prior to you, Jimmy, we had AD after AD after AD after AD, okay? Right. So if we have a lot of turnover in administration, can we implement this policy? You know, I fear for that. You know, what's the next guy gonna say? So you know, do this. You know, I just want consistency and make sure you know everything about what could happen. Could a parent sue you if they decide that your kid can't play football because you're not signing this agreement? That's all.
Thank you, Camille. Right, in the green shirt. Yes, sir. I know your name, but I can't remember. I'm sorry.
That's fine, it's Aaron.
Thank you, Eric.
I came here mostly just wanting to learn more about the issue, and I've yet to be completely convinced that this is the method of addressing the problem, which we all agree exists. And I wish that we had a little bit more data in a school like Orange or somewhere that had done the test twice, the Pride survey, and said, you know, we did this survey, and then we started testing. We did the survey again, and now we can demonstrate that we have lower use. And I think, you know, I would love to ask them to do that, give us a little data, because I don't know anything about this, but at this meeting I learned 2 ways that I can cheat the test. I can get drunk on Friday, and it's going to be out of my system by Monday, and I can use when I'm not in season of whatever activity I'm doing, and I can still, you know, 0 positives and figure out how to, it just seems a little funny to imagine all this self-reporting being pretty high levels and then test for 3 years and not have any positive. I would like to see a little more data showing that everybody stopped using, because it sounds amazing. I mean, if that's what happens, you know, you start this program, everybody stops drinking and smoking and doing drugs, then let's do it, you know, great. But I just would like a little more data to convince me that that's actually what is happening, because I'm not yet convinced.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for answering these
These what?
these many, many questions, particularly,
Hey, that's,
I came with 15 and I knew you all most of them. Thank you.
you're very welcome. That's the way it works. Yes,
Yeah, I just had a quick follow-up, Neil. In the newspaper, it was my understanding that if a parent refuses his or her child be drug tested, then they cannot play or participate in the extracurricular activity. Is that correct?
that's how it's done in other schools, I can tell you that.
There's your answer.
Well, no, that's not the answer. Can the parent then sue the school for not allowing the VHSL?
And I can touch on that. That's because
I just want,
Old
I want the
contracts-
school board members and
No,
Jimmy
I
to
understand
research
completely
that
what you're
question.
because all
That
contracts.
question comes back, no, the child can still play, they can be sued. There's my answer.
Because all contracts signed, that thing that says, I will not do drugs during the season, blah, 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 so they're subjected to this random test, that contract's void because it is not constitutional. no unconstitutional contracts can be signed in the state of Virginia or the country. So,
Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to share? If not, I'd like to thank all of you very much. As I said at the beginning of the evening and in the middle of the evening, and as I'll say again now, I think we all have the same basic interest at heart, and we can agree to disagree on certain things, but I do appreciate everyone coming out here, and maybe we'll see some of you next Tuesday at the school board meeting. Thank you very much again for coming out tonight.